The house knows how to be quiet without you. A hush that feels polite until you realize it's also rehearsed. Rain tests the porch roof with gentle fingertips, tapping a rhythm you remember from summers when Grandpa would count storms like old friends returning. You let yourself in with the key that still resists a little, as if locks remember who is allowed to come home. The smell is cedar and coffee ground into the wood, a fragrance of patience and work and conversations finished without shouting. His hat hangs on its hook, brim curved by 1,000 gestures you watched and tried to imitate. You whisper hello like an apology to rooms that no longer answer. On the kitchen table, the sugar bowl sits open, a small hill undisturbed since the morning he didn't come back from the doctor. You put your palm over it and feel nothing but the superstition comforts you anyway. The note is where you don't expect it. Under the placemat he always lifted to check for crumbs, a folded square with your name in the slow, square letters you loved. For when the lilacs bloom, it says, and outside, the bush by the fence is trying its best to keep the promise of purple. You sit down before you open it because your knees understand that paper has weight. Inside, a single sentence. The attic knows where I keep the parts of myself I couldn't repair. You picture him at the workbench, fingers oil dark, telling broken radios to be brave, telling clocks to forgive themselves for losing time. The attic pull cord is exactly above the hallway, where he used to swing you by your wrists until laughter made you light. Dust exhales when you climb, the particles turning into a universe with one careless beam of afternoon. The boards complain politely under your feet, companionable as old men on a bench. You flick on the bare bulb, and the world rearranges into boxes labelled with a logic no one but him could read. There is a trunk you have never seen, grey canvas bruised by decades, leather corners softened like elbows in a beloved coat. The padlock is open, an invitation disguised as neglect. You lift the lid and the air changes. Camphor, paper, a thin metallic ghost of something kept and kept. On top, a wool blanket folded so neatly it looks like it's waiting for inspection. Under it, a tin with cherries painted on the lid, the red chipped into constellations. Your name again, in his hand, this time with a date, 1954 in parentheses, as if the year needed a chaperone. Your heart does that stutter you inherited from him, the one a doctor called benign, and you never believed. You set the tin beside you, and the attic concentrates. The lid comes loose with a small surrendering sigh. Inside, a pocket watch with its face spidered into a beautiful ruin. A strip of newspaper folded to the width of regret. A short length of frayed rope knotted in the middle, and a photograph he never meant to show you. The watch is heavy for its size, warmer than it should be, as if hands have worried it into a second life. On the back, an engraving, TM, keep time for us. The letter tucked beneath the watch is not quite a letter, more a spool of breath held for too long. Kid, it begins, the word you hated when you were 15 and kept when you were 25, because it meant you still belonged to someone. If you're reading this, I am either gone or trying to be honest in a way the living find hard. You stop breathing so you can listen with more of yourself. There is a memory I kept where you couldn't trip over it, he writes, because it is a sharp thing and you were always barefoot. You touch the knotted rope and feel the oil of other summers. The river in 1954, the paper says, and a place unfolds that you recognize without having been there. The photograph is black and white and cruel, Two boys on a bank in rolled-up pants and borrowed bravado. One is your grandfather, hair like a promise he hadn't learned to keep yet. The other is a boy with the kind of grin that wants to be trouble when it grows up. A grin you have seen in your mirror on days you loved yourself. You check the back of the photo, in pencil, me and Tomas, before we got stupid. A laugh escapes you, then doesn't survive the next sentence you read. We dared each other like boys do, Grandpa writes, which is to say we lied to prove we weren't afraid. The attic bulb hums as if agreeing. The current was faster than it looked. The rope was old. Getting across was a thing we'd done a dozen times, so we thought that made us good at surviving. You feel the floor tilt, just a little, the way bridges do in wind. I tied the knot too quickly, he says, and the knot in your palm begins to feel like a throat. I told him it would hold. I told him I'd tested it. I did not tell him I was guessing. You see it then, the rope dancing in water. Two boys laughing into fear. A day that thought it would end like all the other days. Tomas went first, the letter confesses, because he had parents who trusted him, and I had a father who didn't trust anybody. You remember Grandpa's rules, the ones that felt like walls built out of kindness, the ones that kept you 5 feet back from every edge. He made it halfway, the paper says, and the knot remembered it was old. Your stomach learns a new weight. I could have jumped then, he writes. I could have gone in after him. I could have been a hero or a second tragedy. I chose to pull. The rope in your hand is suddenly enormous. Pulling meant I lived with the sound, he says, the one a boy makes when the river takes his name back. You drop the rope, and the floor gives the tiniest answer. I ran, he writes. I ran to the road, to the farmhouse, to anyone who could tell me I had done the right thing by finding help. The newspaper strip unfolds, and the headline is small to the point of cruelty. Local youth lost to current. You recognize the town's cheap grief in the paragraphs, the way it congratulates itself for searching, while making sure not to blame anyone you might need to see at the store. They called it an accident, Grandpa writes. I let them. I let the river be the villain because it had no face to forgive. You count the spaces between his sentences, and they feel like heartbeats he hasn't learned to live with yet. Tomas's mother gave me his watch at the funeral, he says, the way people say a car gave them a ride. She said I was his best friend, and best friends keep time. The watch ticking in your palm is a phantom. You feel it anyway. I wore it and I fixed it, and when it broke for the last time, I started fixing other things. You picture the basement, the bench stained by decades of saving what other people would have thrown away. And I kept the rope to punish the knot, he admits, and you smile a little because he always hated bad knots. I kept the story because the town was small, and grief likes to be held tight where it can't embarrass anyone. Your throat aches with a feeling that has no name you'd say out loud. I married your grandmother, he writes, and she taught me the difference between guilt and responsibility. You see her, apron soft with flour, hands on hips, telling him to sit and listen to sense. I didn't keep Tomas a secret from her, he says, but I kept the dare, because that was my shame, not hers to carry. You think of the instances he told you no. Don't run near the culvert, don't climb the fence, don't stand on the chair to reach the top shelf, and how the no was always a form of I want you to live. Rain gets bored and wanders, the sound moving across the roof like a small parade. I meant to tell you, he writes, when you were old enough to understand that the bravest thing a man can be is cautious. You laugh, and it cracks a little in the middle. But bravery is a story that likes capes, he confesses, and I didn't want you to hear me without one. The attic is suddenly too small for all this weather. There is a bakery 2 towns over, he writes. It smells like sugar that has learned to be memory. You read the name and your mouth shapes it. Morales and daughter. The daughter is 80 if she's a day, he says. She still ties the strings on boxes like she's dressing a child for winter. You memorize the address because paper can be lost, and your body wants to be the archive. I visited her every year, he adds, on Tomas's birthday. I bought a loaf I didn't need. I stood there while she held the watch with me, and neither of us said his name out loud. You hold the watch harder without meaning to. This is the forbidden part, he writes. Forbidden because I did not get permission to be forgiven. You stare at the word forbidden and feel its edges. Your grandmother told me love is a task, not a prize, he says. I wanted to do the task properly. I wanted you to grow with rules that were more about keeping you than keeping you in. You think of your teenage fury at curfews and how you slept anyway, safe within the fence he built. If the lilacs are blooming, he writes, it means the creek has calmed and the roads are less likely to scald your tires. You smile at the way he apologizes to inanimate objects, the way he taught you to please the world, so it will please you back. Go to the bakery, he asks. Take the watch. Tell her I finally chose to be honest in the most inconvenient way. The attic bulb hums a little louder, a bee that fears it will be forgotten. There is one more thing, he writes, and you feel yourself brace like wood when a storm approaches. The sheriff asked me in 1954 if we'd been drinking, he says. We had not. But we had been daring, which is worse in some ways because it passes as clean. You close your eyes and see boys inventing edges to flirt with. I told him we were careful, he writes, which was a lie. We were careless and lucky for a long time, and then we ran out of luck. Your hands find the rope and turn it like a prayer wheel. I am sorry for the ways my care looked like control to you, he says. I did not know how to keep you safe without fencing the whole world. Something like forgiveness stretches in your chest, a cat waking on a warm windowsill. You are braver than I was, he writes, because you let yourself love the water without pretending it loves you back. You set the letter in your lap and listen to the house hold its breath, knowing there is more to read, more to carry, more to deliver to someone who has been waiting for a watch and a sentence. You fold the letter along its tired crease and feel the paper breathe, as if relieved to finally be read by the right eyes. Outside, the lilacs lean over the fence, purple mines opening, and you understand that the season has kept its part of the bargain. The car smells like old pine and last winter's blanket, and the key turns like a small permission. The road out of town is a ribbon that remembers how your grandfather drove. Steady, kind to the brakes, never showing off on the corners. Clouds move like a quiet audience across fields that have learned how to be patient. You rehearse what you might say, and then abandon rehearsal, because honesty sounds wrong when it's memorized. The sign for Morales and daughter is hand-painted, the ampersand curving like an arm, pulling someone closer. A brass bell above the door rings with cheerful insistence, and flour hangs in the air like a blessing that doesn't need anyone's permission. The bakery is warm in a way that isn't temperature. Cases shining with custard glazes, loaves shouldering each other like friends on a bus. Sugar dust turning light into something you can taste. She is there behind the counter, small and sturdy the way old houses are, forearms kissed white with flour to the middle of her sleeves. Her hair is the soft grey of newspaper margins, and her eyes are the colour of lakes that never brag. "Help you?" she asks, and the question holds no suspicion, only a habit of meeting needs. You set the watch on the counter the way you'd set down a sleeping child, and the room forgets to blink. Her hand moves before her face does, reaching with a practiced tenderness that belongs to someone who has handled fragile things for a lifetime. "He brought it," she says, not quite a question, not quite a statement, just a path you can walk. "Every year," you answer, and your voice sounds like you borrowed it from your grandfather's pocket. She nods like a metronome, finding a familiar tempo. "On the 23rd, she says. "He bought a loaf he never could finish. We tied the string together. Bam." The string on the counter is the colour of bakery twine everywhere, red woven into white, a candy cane that never melted. "He never said his name," you tell her. "He wrote it for me because I didn't know how to carry what he couldn't put down." Her mouth learns a grief-shaped smile. "My brother loved the river like it owed him nothing," she says. "We were a family that didn't ask water to be fair." She takes the watch delicately, as if some part of time might spill if tilted, and she turns it until the engraving catches the light. "TM. Keep time for us. My mother paid for that," she says, her voice lowering into a place where memory is safe. She told the jeweler, "He will have to live for 2 now, maybe 3. Maybe every boy who thinks the river is a dare." You swallow, and it sounds loud in the sugar-sweet quiet. "He kept it," you say, and the words arrive softer than you expected. "He kept everything." She sets the watch on a folded napkin like an altar cloth. "He'd stand right there," she says, pointing to a square of floor that looks exactly like all the other squares, and exactly like none of them. "He'd hold the watch, and he'd tell me about your laugh without saying your name." You feel your face blush with a pride that doesn't need witnesses. "He said you counted storms," you offer. "He said you kept the house from becoming too quiet." "He brought lilacs once," she adds, gaze drifting somewhere behind you that the counter can't see. Too much purple for a bakery, but we survived. The bell rings and someone backs out quickly, apologizing, sensing the air is busy with something it should not interrupt. She reaches under the counter and brings up a box. The cardboard, the soft tan of things that have been honest for a long time. "I kept this for him," she says. "He wouldn't take it. He said I should mind the living and he would mind the time." Inside is a photograph you have not earned, and she gives it anyway. 2 boys on a bank, a rope laughing, a summer that thought it wouldn't end. "I took it," she says, "the day before. I thought nothing special about it, and then it collected meaning like dust." Her finger taps the edge of the picture, a gentle scold to fate. "He came the week after the funeral," she says, the sentence landing carefully, as if it knows where not to step. "He apologized for not drowning." Your breath catches with the audacity of that line. with the way shame teaches the wrong lessons. My mother told him to stop learning grief like it was Latin, she says. She told him we needed him to fix radios and bridges and boys who don't know knots. You look at the twine. It waits confidently, a neat spool, sure of its own purpose. Show me, you ask without knowing exactly what you are asking. She smiles for real then, the bakery kind that lifts her whole face, and she pulls a small box onto the counter. She lays the twine across it, measures by eye, cuts with scissors that remember other mornings. There's a knot that doesn't slip when pulled, she says. Baker's knot, some call it. 2 loops, mirrored, a conversation where both listen. Her hands move, and the twine becomes obedience without losing dignity. You see, she asks, tugging. The knot holds like a promise that has been practiced. He asked me to show him that, she continues, her tone turning back into an old day. He tied boxes until his fingers remembered the lesson his body hadn't been taught in time. A laugh flutters out of you, and then a sob walks behind it with a hand on its shoulder. He built the little footbridge by the culvert, she says, as if mentioning the weather. Paid for the plaque under the lichen. Anonymous, he said, but the town is small. We know how to keep the right secrets. The word plaque echoes in your ribs, a soft metal note. I brought the watch, you say, almost apologizing. She nods again, a permission. You keep it, she says. You're the one who hears it. You want to argue and can't find the verbs. Come back tomorrow morning, she adds. We'll go see the bridge when the light is honest. You take the watch, but it feels like the watch is taking you. That night, the motel bed remembers other travelers' sorrows and holds yours without complaint. You place the watch on the nightstand, and it lies there like a seal on a letter still to be sent. Sleep comes like a teacher who forgives homework turned in late. Dawn brings a bakery that smells like heaven decided to specialize. She is waiting with 2 coffees, one sweet the way small mercies are. The drive to the culvert is short enough to be a breath, and long enough to prepare. The bridge is more footpath than architecture. The wood silvered by weather. The rails smooth where hands have taught it to be kind. The lilacs along the ditch have snuck into the scene like uninvited guests who were secretly on the list. She kneels slowly, a prayer without religion, and clears lichen with a thumb until letters wake. Tomás Morales, 1937-1954. He thought it would be grand, she whispers. A stone, a sermon, a public penance. My mother said no. Put it where it helps. Bush. You hold the watch, and the river holds its breath the way it does before deciding, and for a heartbeat, the whole world is a held note. He came every year, she says. We didn't talk about the day. We talked about how the bread rose. We talked about your storms. You laugh because the idea of your storms traveling to her makes you larger and softer at once. He taught knots to the scouts who didn't want to sit still, she adds. He taught them that pulling hard isn't the same as holding well. The water moves with that indisputable authority it has, and you understand you are not here to negotiate, only to witness. You take the bakery twine from your pocket. She must have slipped it there when you were not looking. You tie a baker's knot around a small bouquet of lilac you didn't say you would bring, and somehow did. The knot holds, and the flowers do not ask to leave. You set them on the rail, not in the water, because memorials don't always need to drown to be true. He always worried that his caution was a cage, she says. I told him a good fence is what keeps the tomatoes safe, not the birds out. You think of gardens and of all the ways safety is an invitation when it's done right. A train calls from far away, the sound like a thread pulling the day through the needle's eye. I'm going to tell them, you say, surprised at how sure your voice is. My mother, my cousins, whoever needs to know the shape of the love that kept us 5 feet back. She looks at you and sees someone she has known longer than she actually has. Tell it like a recipe, she advises, not a law. A way to make something rise when it would prefer to fall. You smile at the way she keeps turning pain into instruction without insulting either. The watch warms in your palm like it is a small animal that has decided to trust. Set it, she says. Pick a time that means living. You think of beginnings that were quiet enough to sneak up on you. First coffee shared over a broken toaster. First rain counted without fear. First morning you did not apologize to the mirror. You set the hands to 8:12, a time that has no story other than the one you will make now. The click is tiny and enormous. He would like that, she says. He wanted time to belong to you again. The river takes a breath you can see, a small ripple shrugging into sunlight. You walk the length of the bridge and back, teaching your feet the sentence it says. This is how you cross, without daring the water to love you. On the way back to the bakery, she tells you about the year the oven betrayed them, and how a neighbor showed up with 3 pies and a grin big enough to feed. Grief and kindness take turns in her stories, like sisters sharing a coat. She wraps a loaf you didn't ask for, and writes your name on the paper, as if names are things you can keep warm. For the road, she says, and you feel the road thank her. At the car, you hesitate because goodbyes are tricky knots, and you are still learning. She reaches out and squeezes your wrist exactly where your pulse admits it is mortal, and it feels like someone tying a safer knot in you. The bell rings when you leave, a small ceremony that doesn't brag. The drive home is a lesson in how distance is not only miles, but also seconds that have learned to be gentle. When you arrive, the house stands the way it always has, humble, cooperative, ready to keep confidences until asked to share. You climb the attic stairs with the watch in your pocket, and the bulb says hello in its small bee voice. The trunk waits without impatience. It has practice. You lay the rope back inside and add the twine beside it, not as a replacement, but as a conversation. The photograph of the boys goes into a sleeve, the kind that protects without suffocating. You slide the letter under the tin and add a new page on top addressed to anyone coming after. The recipe for a knot that doesn't slip. Downstairs, you open windows and let the lilacs tell the kitchen what color the world is today. You make coffee strong enough to wake the dead and gentle enough not to scare them if they come. The table receives the loaf, and the first slice steam curls like a grateful animal. You eat standing up, because joy doesn't always want a chair. Later, you call your mother and begin with the ending you want. He was careful because he loved us. You tell her about the river and the rope and the bridge that helps more than it explains. You tell her about the watch and the engraving, and how forgiveness can be a thing you do in a bakery over a counter dusted with sugar. She is quiet for a long time, a silence that feels like stitching. He would have hated how long I let you talk to the water, she says finally, and you both laugh into the place where tears once sat. You promise to take her to the bridge, when the roads are less likely to scald the tires. Evening turns the windows into mirrors, and you catch sight of yourself holding time and not shaking. You write the story down whole, not because you think the world will deserve it, but because you do. You include the part where he chose to pull and live with the sound, the part where a mother gave a watch instead of a verdict, the part where a daughter 80 if she's a day ties twine, so a box remembers not to fall open. You read it out loud to the empty room, because emptiness listens better than people do when you need to say something true. The house accepts the new echo you make, adding it to its private collection of storms counted and apologies retired. Night comes gentle, a teacher who says, "See you tomorrow instead of now, you're done." You set the watch on the bedside table, and it becomes a small lighthouse that does not blink. In the dark, you say a name you were not there to learn, and feel it answer anyway in the way rivers do, by moving forward. Sleep finds you and does not ask for anything you can't give. In your dream, your grandfather stands on the bridge he built, knotting bakery twine around the railing, showing a boy with a grin how to make one loop listen to the other. He looks up at you, and you hear the sentence he always meant to say. "I did not jump because I needed to live to teach you how not to." You wake with the taste of bread and lilacs in your mouth, and a single steady thought: forbidden memories are only dangerous when no one will hold them. You dress like the day deserves you, and carry the watch in a pocket that has learned to be brave without lying. The attic is no longer a hiding place. It has become a library where the sharp things live in labeled drawers, ready for careful hands. You open the front door, and the morning opens back, and for a long, delicious second, the world feels exact. You step outside, and the air recognizes you as someone who has chosen to keep time for more than yourself. Somewhere, a bell rings, bakery or bicycle, or the small metal mouth of the day telling you to go. And you do.